The envelope was unsealed. No return address, just her name written in a shaky script. Ava D. It was wedged between her storm door and the frame, like it had been delivered by someone who didn't want to be seen. Not the post office, not a neighbor with decency. Ava stared at it for a full minute before taking it inside. Her son, Micah, had his headphones on at the kitchen table, tapping away at his laptop. She didn't open it right away. She set it down next to the sink, poured herself a glass of water, and looked out the window toward the quiet cul-de-sac. Same trimmed hedges, same beige minivans, same dog barking behind the wrought iron fence across the street. The dog they'd said just needed time to adjust when it snarled at Micah. She picked the envelope up again, opened it with a butter knife, read the folded paper once, then again. This is a family neighborhood. Please be mindful of noise, music, and other activities that make it hard for the rest of us to feel comfortable in our own homes. No signature, no contact info, just a line in lowercase at the bottom. We're watching. Ava folded it back up without a word and slipped it into a drawer beneath the silverware tray. It wasn't the first. The first one had come 2 weeks after they moved in, about the color of her curtains. Too bold for the community palate, it said. Another had mentioned her son's bike being left near the curb for too long. That one had come with a screenshot of their front yard from an odd angle, like someone had leaned out their second-story window just to capture it. She had smiled that time, quietly. No one had knocked. No one had introduced themselves, but the complaints were always typed, folded and slipped between door handles with care, and Ava had learned long ago that carelessness doesn't hide itself in chaos. It hides in precision. That night, she walked the property line of her new home. Not in a rush, not pacing, just walking slow with a flashlight, pausing every few steps to glance toward the other windows. Most were dark. Some had blinds cracked just enough to suggest eyes behind. Them she wasn't scared, but she wasn't naive either. This wasn't her first move. Just the first time she'd bought in a neighborhood that smiled with tight teeth. Micah called out from the porch, "You good, Mom?" "Fine, baby. Just checking the sprinklers." She wasn't. She was checking the feeling in her bones. And it was familiar. The next morning she left for work early, but not before making 2 phone calls from the driveway. The first was to the HOA office to request a copy of all community guidelines and complaint history. She gave no attitude, no clue, just thanked them in a warm tone and said she was catching up. The second was to a private security contractor she'd used before, in a different zip code, back when the threats weren't quite so veiled. By noon, she had new cameras ordered. Small ones, discreet, night vision, motion-triggered alerts. Installation scheduled for Saturday. By the time she pulled back into the driveway that evening, a small welcome home gift basket sat at the front door. Grapes, a bottle of sparkling cider. A card that said, "Just wanted you to know some of us do belong here." See, she didn't take it inside, just set it gently in the trash bin, closed the lid, and went in through the garage. Some of us do belong here. She locked the door behind. Her exhaled through her nose, and finally allowed herself a smirk. 2 houses down, a "For Sale by Owner" sign had gone up on the corner lot. White siding, brick trim, manicured boxwoods. Ava noticed it that Monday morning on her way to drop Micah off at school. She didn't slow the car. She didn't say a word. But when she pulled into the parking garage beneath her downtown office building, she was already texting her real estate lawyer. Not an agent, a lawyer. "Check zoning on 4123 West Eves. I want to know if it's held in trust or under mortgage. Quiet close if possible." She closed the app before the typing dots blinked back. At lunch, her assistant asked if she was okay. "You've barely touched your cob," she said, glancing at the half-picked salad on Ava's desk. "I'm just..." Thinking, Ava replied. About? Ava smiled slightly. How little people think. She got home around 6:30 that evening. Micah was already doing homework, music on low. A calm, familiar beat, no lyrics, just rhythm. Ava listened for a moment, before glancing at the small white notice taped neatly to her mailbox. She peeled it off slowly. Reminder: your mailbox paint color does not conform to current HOA regulations. Please repaint to approved shade, neutral, sandstone, within 7 days to avoid penalty. It was signed this time. Sincerely, HOA Architectural Committee? She laughed. Soft and dry. There were 6 mailboxes on the cul-de-sac. 4 of them, including hers, were beige. 2 were still black. She took a photo of all of them, labeled them, emailed herself. Then she walked back into the house where the smell of cinnamon from the slow cooker greeted her like a friend. She set down her bag and opened a drawer in the entryway, neatly filing the notice behind the others. That weekend the cameras were installed. The man who came to do it, mid-30s, veteran, quiet, looked familiar, though Ava couldn't place him. He worked quickly, politely, never asked questions. As he packed up, he looked toward the cul-de-sac, then back at her. You want audio alerts or just motion? He asked. Just motion, he nodded. You expecting problems? Ava met his gaze calmly. Already got 'em. He paused a beat. Folks don't like change, he said finally, tapping his drill bag closed, especially when it moves in next door and knows how to read property law. That made her chuckle, just slightly. You're not from around here, are you? No, ma'am. I'm from people who know how to act right. Later that night, she watched the security feed from her phone. At 1:13 a.m., a woman in yoga pants and a messy bun jogged past, then slowed. She paused in front of Ava's house, looked around, pulled something from her hoodie pocket, and leaned toward the porch. The motion alert chimed in Ava's hand. By the time the woman had turned back toward the sidewalk, the camera had caught her face in full frame. Ava didn't move. Didn't zoom. She just watched. Then, slowly, she opened her notes app and typed, House 3, blonde, tall, midnight, hoodie, repeat visitor. She stared at the screen for a long while, not angry, not flinching, just confirming what she already knew. The next morning her lawyer called. 23 West Eves is held in a family trust. 2 brothers. One lives out of state, wants to cash out, the other's dragging his feet. Get him a cash offer with a 30-day window, Ava said. Do you want to walk the property? I don't need to, she replied. I already live next door. The cul-de-sac had a rhythm to it. Ava noticed it more after the cameras went up. Trash bins were pulled to the curb every Wednesday by exactly 6:30 a.m. Mail came at 1:12. The Labrador 3 doors down barked at 3:05 when the school bus rumbled past. And every evening at 7:15, the same 2 women took the same walk, yoga, pants, wine tumblers in hand, moving slow enough to call it a stroll but fast enough to call it an excuse. They didn't wave, they didn't speak, but they whispered. That was the rhythm. Ava sat on the porch that Thursday evening. Not for long, just 15 minutes, enough to be seen. She wore a grey sweatshirt, plain jeans. Her hands stayed busy, cutting brown dead heads from her begonias. The house was quiet behind her, the lights warm. The 2 women passed. Whisper. Sip, pause, whisper, walk. She didn't flinch. By Saturday, Ava had a formal purchase agreement on the corner lot. One brother signed quickly, the other wanted more. She offered $5,000 over asking, no contingencies, all cash. The lawyer called back with a dry laugh. He caved the moment I said you were offering above market. Think he thought he won? He did, Ava said, until he didn't. Sunday morning brought sunshine and another note. This one wasn't typed. It was handwritten, large and deliberate. You're bringing property values down. People are starting to talk. Maybe this neighborhood isn't a good fit. No envelope. Just the paper, pinned to her front door with a piece of Scotch tape. She didn't touch it, just took a picture. The camera had caught the hand that pinned it. Same hoodie, same watch. This time, broad daylight. 7:48 a.m. Ava sent the photo to herself with a single word beneath it. Got you. By evening she was walking the block. Slow. Casual. A clipboard in one hand, a coffee in the other. She stopped outside 4123 West Eaves, studied the siding, glanced at the foundation, measured something quietly with her eyes. Then she looked. Up, one of the curtains shifted inside, just barely. 2 days later, the for sale sign was gone. No one saw the moving truck. Just a white SUV with out-of-state plates, a man in a ball cap and a quiet exit. Ava stood in the driveway, keys in hand, as the title company sent over the final transfer email. She smiled. Not wide. Just enough. One down. That night, Micah asked her something over dinner. Why'd you buy that house? She looked at him for a moment, then answered quietly, because they didn't think I could. He nodded. No more questions. And Ava knew he understood. Ava didn't speak during the first 30 minutes of the HOA meeting. She sat near the back, folded neatly into one of the plastic chairs with her palms resting on her knees, listening. Always listening. It was held in the small community clubhouse. Low ceilings, dusty blinds, and walls still decorated with faded pastel wreaths from last Easter. A half-empty tray of Costco cookies sat sweating on a folding table near the front. Someone had brought lemonade in a jug. Too sweet, too forced. They talked about mulch pricing, fence height. There was a 10-minute discussion on whether glow-in-the-dark Halloween decorations were tacky or festive. Ava kept her expression smooth. Across the room, Mrs. Susan LaRoche, president of the HOA for 7 years running, tapped her pen loudly against a printed agenda. Blonde, polished, always wore linen. Her voice carried like someone who'd never once been corrected. Okay, next order of business, she said, adjusting her glasses. There have been several complaints about lawn aesthetics, particularly non-conforming plants and decorative items that weren't cleared by the Architectural Committee. Her eyes scanned the room, then settled on Ava, briefly, then moved on. A man in a golf polo, Greg, she'd learned, added, "We've also had reports of, let's just say, non-standard activity patterns, multiple cameras installed, unusual, foot traffic, notes left on other residents' properties." A few heads turned. One woman nodded, lips tight. Ava stayed still. LaRoche cleared her throat. "We want to maintain a sense of peace and belonging here, which means gently enforcing our shared values, right?" A couple of murmurs. A hand raised, quickly withdrawn, then silence. Ava stood, not quickly, not theatrically, just stood. "I'd like to request a copy of all complaints filed against my property in the last 60 days, she said evenly. "With names attached." LaRoche blinked. "That's not standard procedure." "I know," Ava interrupted, her voice low but steady. "But under state HOA statutes, I'm entitled to review any complaints made by registered members of the board or community residents that result in disciplinary actions or financial penalties, especially if they're being used to target one property disproportionately." Greg opened his mouth, then closed it again. Ava stepped forward 1 row. "And I'd also like to file a formal complaint against the HOA for harassment, selective enforcement, and failure to adhere to impartial code application. I'll be submitting it with documentation." LaRoche frowned. "Ms. Daniels, I think we've gotten off on the wrong foot here." "No," Ava said softly. "You got off on the wrong foot when you thought I'd just sit quiet." She smiled, not unkindly, but with finality. "I'm not here to fit in. I'm here because I bought in." Then she walked back to her seat. No more. No less. That night another note appeared, but this one was different, typed, no threats. "No warnings. You could have just talked to us. This isn't personal." Ava read it under the porch light, then slipped it into a file marked Tone Shift. She wasn't interested in conversations anymore. She was building something. By Friday, she had 2 more listings flagged in the same neighborhood. One was a rental property with an owner desperate to sell. The other, her divorce sale, both motivated, both negotiable, and both, as luck would have it, and within Ava's budget. The second house she bought had a lemon-yellow front door. It was chipped at the edges, sun-faded, clearly once bright and hopeful, like someone had tried to bring cheer to the porch, then gave up. Ava didn't repaint it. She left it as it was. The house had belonged to a couple going through a quiet divorce. No kids, no fuss. Just tired apologies and 2 separate signatures on the sale agreement. Ava made her offer through a trust name. Clean, no questions. By the time escrow closed, no one in the neighborhood realized who had taken ownership. She kept it empty for now. Unrushed, let the blinds stay drawn. Mowed the lawn herself on Sunday mornings. Waved to no one. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that the gossip started again. A post on the neighborhood forum hinted at new investors changing the character of the block. Another speculated that Section 8 tenants might be moving in soon. Someone posted a blurry photo of Ava mowing the yellow door lawn. Caption, "Anyone know her deal?" She didn't comment. She just screenshotted everything, archived it, dated it, printed it on office paper, and slid it into a binder labeled Public Record. Micah came home from school that day, quiet. "Everything okay?" she asked, setting 2 plates on the counter, grilled salmon and rice. He shrugged. "Some. Kids were talking about our street. Said their mums said it was changing too fast." Ava didn't respond right away. She handed him a fork, waited until he started eating, then said, "Change doesn't scare people, baby. What scares them is realizing they don't control it." He chewed slowly. "You think they're scared of us?" Ava looked out the window, toward the cul-de-sac. The porch light across the street flickered, then went out. "I think," she said quietly, "they're scared of me." The third house took longer. It had been a rental, poorly managed, half the gutters hanging loose, front flower beds gone to weeds, but it sat across from Ava's with a direct view into her kitchen window. She wanted that view. Her lawyer called the landlord. Offered a quiet buyout with inspection waived. Cash. They laughed at first. "We're not interested." 2 weeks later, the same landlord called back. A tenant had broken the lease early. AC unit died. Pipe burst. Suddenly they were very interested. On closing day, Ava walked the perimeter at dusk, slow and steady, same way she had with her own home. It was the first time one of the whisper walkers stopped. Susan LaRoche, linen again, same forced smile. "You've been busy," she said, tone light but tight. Ava didn't answer. Susan tried again. "Just wondering what your plans are with that one. Heard it's a flip?" Ava turned to her. Calm, direct, no plans. Susan laughed brittle. "Well, that's just curious." "Is it?" A pause. Then Susan leaned in just slightly. "We really value consistency around here." Ava met her eyes. "So do I." Then she turned and walked up the steps of her third home. That night, the neighborhood forum was quiet. No new posts, just one listing that got taken down, one more light that went out. The HOA newsletter arrived. 2 days late, folded in half, delivered to each mailbox in glossy ink with stock images of happy neighbors grilling kebabs and tossing frisbees across green lawns. Ava's copy had a post-it on it. "Please note, Your dues for Q2 are marked pending. Contact the treasurer to avoid late fees. She read it once, then turned to the fine print on page 2. Treasurer Greg L. Contact, personal Gmail. No office listed. Ava didn't flinch. She already had the receipts. Literally. Auto-drafted. Dated. Time-stamped. Cleared. She opened her laptop and logged into the HOA's payment portal. The balance read 0.00 paid in full, so she printed the confirmation, wrote paid, nice try, in red pen across it, and dropped it off in the clubhouse mailbox herself. No envelope, just folded. Face up visible. That same night she sent an email to the state's Community Association Regulatory Office. Subject line: Possible financial mismanagement. Requesting audit of HOA disbursements and dues. Attached, screenshots of her payment history, a scan of the late notice, the HOA's last. 3 newsletters, her documentation binder, including a running log of targeted enforcement. She didn't CC the board. She didn't warn them. She just hit send. Then closed her laptop and poured herself a cup of mint tea. At Sunday service, 2 neighbors moved pews after Ava sat down. The choir director glanced her way, then turned back to the piano, missing a note in the prelude. Micah noticed. He didn't say a word, but on the drive home he asked, "You ever think about moving?" Ava kept her eyes on the road. "No," he nodded. "Didn't think so." That Tuesday she received a call from an unfamiliar number. She let it go to voicemail, then played it on speaker in the kitchen. "Hi, Ms. Daniels, this is Officer Ruiz with the State HOA Regulatory Division. We've received your file. Impeccable documentation, thank you. We're scheduling a preliminary audit next month, and would appreciate any additional notes you might have. Please let us know if the HOA is aware of the pending review. We'd like to keep it unannounced." Ava stirred her soup, smiled quietly. "Unannounced," she repeated. The very next day, Greg knocked. On her door, first time ever. He was dressed down, jeans, polo untucked, clipboard in hand. He smiled too wide, like it might fix something. "Hi, Ms. Daniels, just doing a friendly check-in with a few homeowners on the block. New initiative. You know, keeping things friendly and transparent." Ava opened the storm door. Slowly. Didn't move aside. "Transparency," she said flatly. "That new?" Greg laughed nervously. "We're working on it," she nodded. "That's good, because they are too." He blinked. "Who?" She tilted her head. "The state." The way his face changed, just slightly, like a pin dropping. In the back of a theater, told her everything she needed. He swallowed. "Once, well, if you ever have questions about dues or guidelines, don't hesitate to reach out." She didn't smile. "I don't have questions, I have copies." Greg nodded too fast. "Great, that's great." She closed the door without another word. That night, she placed a small yellow sticky note in her binder under the tab marked Power Shift. It read, "They know." Ava noticed it first in the way Susan LaRoche's smile had started to strain. At the next HOA meeting, held a week after the audit was quietly confirmed, the room looked different. Same folding chairs, same tepid lemonade, same off-brand cookies, but fewer people. 3 chairs empty in the front row. 2 of the usual whisperers nowhere in sight. One of the board members, the secretary, a woman named Denise, absent for the first time in over a year. Susan cleared her throat twice before starting the meeting. Her eyes flicked nervously between Greg and the door, like she was waiting for something, Enan or someone, that didn't show. "We'll begin with community updates," she said, clasping her hands together on the podium. "We'd like to remind residents that anonymous complaints are no longer being reviewed, per newly revised internal policy." Ava sat in the second row, legs crossed, hands folded in her lap. She didn't react. Greg added quickly. All complaint submissions now require identifying information and photographic documentation. Going forward, we'll be enforcing only confirmed violations, not personal preferences. His voice stumbled slightly at the end. He didn't look at Ava, but everyone else did. Briefly, then away. After the meeting, a woman Ava had never spoken to approached her in the parking lot. She was older. Olive cardigan, keys jingling in her hand. "I just want to say," the woman said quietly, "not everyone here is like them. Some of us were just trying to keep our heads down." Ava studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you," she said. "But keeping your head down only works when it's not your door they're slipping notes under." The woman swallowed. Her eyes flicked toward the clubhouse. "It won't be much longer. People talk. People know." "I know," Ava said, and left it there. That Friday, Ava met with a contractor at the Yellow Door house. Not for renovations, not yet. "Looking to lease it out?" the man asked, eyeing the worn trim. "No." She handed him a folder. Inside, architectural sketches, permits, already pre-filed. Notes on legal conversion. "You're turning it into an office?" he asked, blinking. She smiled. "A community resource center." "For this neighborhood?" "For this and a few others nearby. Tax prep, legal help, housing navigation, all pro bono for the first 6 months. The contractor let out a low whistle. "You're serious?" "I'm always serious when people try to silence me." By the time she got home that evening, Micah had set the table. They ate in calm. Quiet music played in the background. A saxophone, maybe. She didn't ask. Halfway through dinner, he looked up and asked, "So, what happens when you own the whole street?" She looked at him, considered it. "Then I decide who gets to stay." The audit report arrived on a Wednesday. Thick, envelope, official seal, marked confidential. Ava opened it at the kitchen table with her tea still steaming. Inside, misappropriated funds, dues improperly applied, selective enforcement, 3 violations against Ava's home deemed non-compliant with governing law, a recommendation for board restructuring. She didn't smile, she just exhaled. 2 weeks later, Susan LaRoche resigned, cited health reasons in an email that went out to the neighborhood listserv. No apology, no accountability, just absence. Greg stepped down quietly 3 days after. The secretary, Denise, never returned. By the end of the month, the HOA board had been reduced to 2 members and a vacancy, which meant an election. Ava didn't campaign. She didn't post on forums or canvass or send out flyers. She just showed up at the next meeting, sat quietly, and accepted the nomination from a neighbor no one expected to speak up, the older woman in the say. Olive Cardigan. They voted unanimous. She took over as HOA President in the same linen chair Susan had always used, but refused the podium. "I'll be addressing things from the floor," she said simply. First order of business, eliminate anonymous complaints. Second, create a public ledger of board decisions and dues spending. Third, offer voluntary mediation for neighbors in dispute, led by a third-party facilitator. No. One argued. No one dared. She wrote the next HOA newsletter herself. No stock photos, just a clean header, white background, and a message that started, "To all who call this neighborhood home, welcome." Real welcome. Then, halfway down, "We all want peace, but peace built on silence isn't peace, and it's pressure. This community belongs to everyone who treats others with dignity, and that includes me." The Yellow Door House opened its doors 3 weeks later as the Eve Center for Housing and Fair Access, free legal consultations on Mondays, tax help on Thursdays. Kids from the neighborhood started biking up the driveway after school, asking if they could charge their phones or wait for their parents, They were never turned away. One afternoon, Ava stepped out to water her begonias. A new family was moving in across the street. Black couple, 2 little girls, pink curtains fluttering in the window. She waved. The mother smiled back. "We've heard about you." Ava tipped her head. "Good things, I hope," the woman laughed. "The best kind, the quiet kind." A week later, another envelope appeared on Ava's porch. No handwriting, no threat, just a printed HOA welcome letter. At the bottom, a line in bold: Board President Ava Daniels. "If you ever feel unwelcome, you're not alone. Come find me." She folded it in half and slid it into her drawer, next to all the old notes, where they could stay. Unbothered, undeniable.